What's up guys, my name is Shivo, and today we're going to be playing some Kerbal Space Program. Kerbal Space Program is an indie game made by the developers at Squad. It's a sandbox game, but the main point really is to get to other planets, or your moons. But since it's a sandbox game, you can do whatever you want. So I've made us a little save here, so we're gonna load that up, and here we are. Here's our space station. We have the runway, of course, for horizontal takeoffs. You get your launch pad over here to the right for vertical takeoffs. You have your space plane hangar. This is where you build your space planes for horizontal takeoff. And your vehicle assembly building, which is for rockets. Right here, we have our tracking station. We're going to go into it so we can see the planets. This is Kerbin. This is where you and your Kerbals live. If we zoom out some, we can see we have the moon, which orbits Kerbin, and also Minimus. So those are the two moons. If we keep on zooming out, we'll find we have actually 5 planets right now to explore. These were added in the most recent patch. We have Jewel, Duna, Kerbin, Eve, and Moho. Each of these has their own moons, but we aren't going to get into that right now. We're just going to worry about Kerbin and the other two, and its moons. So I'm going to treat this kind of like a tutorial, since it is the first episode. So we're going to go into the vehicle assembly building, and we see that we have immediately some pods to choose from, some command modules. So let's go through these real fast. This is the Mark 1 cockpit. It is for space planes primarily. You can still use it on rockets, but it's mainly for space planes. It's actually the only one right now with the fully functional interior. We have the Mark II cockpit, which is again for space planes. The Mark III cockpit for shuttles. And then the Mark I-II command pod, which is for larger rockets. And the command pod Mark I, which is for smaller rockets. We're going to pull out the Mark I, and we're going to move it up some. So there we go. There's our command pod. Over here on the left side, you're going to see tons and tons of different things. It's really overwhelming at first, so that's why I'm taking you through it. So you have, we'll just go one by one. You have fuel tanks. We'll go ahead and we'll just throw it on here. So there you go. This is a fuel tank. It is the smaller fuel tank, but not the smallest fuel tank. Here's the smallest fuel tank. This right here is a very large fuel tank. It's primarily used with the larger command pod. And then the smaller large fuel tank. Alright, moving on, we have the basic jet engine. This needs jet fuel, not rocket fuel. The 4 tanks you just saw are rocket fuel. So you'd need this one right here, which is the jet fuel. You have your 3 basic rocket. These are your 3 basic rocket, rockets engines. You have large, medium, small. The larger ones burn fuel faster, obviously, but give you more power. And then the small one barely takes any fuel, but it doesn't have a whole lot of power. You're going to need these big ones to get out of the atmosphere. But once you're out of the atmosphere, you can really just use the small ones to get where you want to go. So let's put those up, and we'll get to the bigger engines. So here you go. Ignore the fact that these are transparent, by the way. They're transparent until you attach them. But so this is a large engine. It is for these, obviously. If it's perfectly on the bottom of these. But these were added in 0.16, and they're interesting because they can move. They're not static. If you want to turn, they'll kind of bend that direction that you want to go. So these are really useful for getting out of the atmosphere. They're what I normally use. And then the smaller one burns less fuel, but it's still a lot of fuel. So you're going to want to, when you get into space, you're going to want to downsize to one of these. The next two we have here are your jet fuel, which, like I said, is for your jet engine. So you got your jet fuel, and then your fuselage. And the structural fuselage doesn't have any fuel in it. It's just for extra length. And but it's really light. It has a 0.4 mass, whereas something filled with fuel has a 1.2 mass. Anyway, okay, so we have the Mark II fuselage, which is they don't have a whole lot of Mark II things yet, so you probably won't be using this too much. And then you have a Mark II to Mark I adapter here. You could use that to transform your ship into a Mark II ship, but again, not important. Then you have Mark II to Mark III adapter, and the Mark III is the shuttle. Anyway, ignore those last couple ones because you probably won't be using them for a while because they don't have full functionality yet. This is an interesting one. It just got added in 0.17 as well. It is the nuclear engine, the atomic rocket. It has a really low fuel consumption rate, but gives a decent amount of power. So if you're planning on going interplanetary, this is the one you're going to want. These are just side-mounted rockets. They pull fuel from whatever they're touching. On the next page, we have the RCS Fuel. Now, RCS is I guess it's just a puff of air, I guess. It's, when you are in space, you don't have atmosphere to help you turn. So RCS can blow a puff of air or puff of, I don't actually know what it is. But when it blows that puff of air, it helps you turn. But anyway, this is the fuel tank for it. You're going to want one of these on your ship. This is the large version of the RCS fuel tank. This is a Separatron. It's a little itty bitty rocket. It's for separating your stages. This is a solid rocket. These are both solid rockets. Solid rockets don't need fuel. They already have the fuel inside of them. The fuel tanks are just for the liquid rockets. And then these next two are jet parts. This takes more fuel than the other jet part I showed you. So this one right here takes next to no fuel. This one takes a medium amount of fuel, but it goes faster. And then this right here, a turbo or aerospike, there we go. It can take jet or rocket fuel, and it has an extremely high power output with extremely high fuel consumption. So if you want to get somewhere fast, that's the one to pick. Okay. I guess I should have explained what these tabs are up here. You have propulsion, which is there's all your engines, which we just went through. Command and control, structural and aerodynamic, utility and scientific, and then the last two aren't used right now. They're just completely empty. I think they mentioned that they're going to be changing this layout so that they aren't going to actually use these two for a while. So let's go to the next tab and take a look at all these items. You have your advanced canard, which is a movable wing. It when you steer, it will move. You got your advanced SAS and your SAS. So these are really important to any of your rocket. They need to be in your very topmost stage. The SAS helps control what direction your rocket is facing, but it has no control over anything other than which direction it's facing. Your advanced SAS right here has control over all of your wings, your canards, everything, and it'll keep you facing in the same direction using those rather than the SAS, which just uses itself to point you in the right direction. We have your control surfaces, which are you can attach them to, like, we'll just attach it here real fast. But you attach it to like wings and stuff, and these are your ailerons, or they're the parts that move to make you turn, basically. This is an advanced SAS. It's the large version of it. Yeah, I've never used one of these. I don't think it actually does anything. Let's read real fast. Sensor array computing nose cones outfitted with many quality sensors. Okay, so I assume this is something that's going to be used in a future update, but it's not used right now. You have your standard canard, again another moving surface. Here are your RCSs. You have your RCS thruster block and your port linear RCS. The port linear RCSs can only shoot forward. When you attach them to the side, for example, it only shoots one direction. And then these can shoot 4 directions, so I hardly ever use the linear ones. And that's about it for this page. You got a winglet. Again, this is another movable surface to help control yourself while you're in the atmosphere. And next up is structural and aerodynamic. So I guess we'll just go through. A lot of this stuff is just for looks, in all honesty. Like this tail connector, for example. It's just completely for looks. You have a circular intake. This is for your jets. It helps you intake air at higher altitudes. This is another version of the intakes. This one actually can pull in more air than the other. You have your decoupler. Decouplers are for your staging. After your stage is done with all its fuel, of course you want to get rid of it to make yourself lighter. So you use these to get rid of excess parts. That was the large version. This is the small version. Okay, next up you have the delta wing. This is a structural piece of equipment used for space planes, for wings. This is an external fuel duct. You use it to get fuel from a fuel tank to somewhere else on the plane. You see, if I move around, you can see the fuel line stretching. And the fuel travels in the direction that you place it. So the first click is where you're taking fuel from, and your second click is where you want fuel to go to. This is just an adapter. It goes from Mark 1 to a Mark 3. So, for example, I could now put on the big fuel tanks. That's a really useful part. We have the launch stability enhancers. These are actually added to fix a glitch with taking off. It used to be that in certain situations when you started your engine, you just wouldn't take off. And these were to help by holding you off the ground on the launch pad. So when you press spacebar to start, it detaches itself and you launch. It's really, really useful. So let's continue. You have your engine nacelle, I think that's how you say it. It gives you increased fuel flow. It makes your engines more powerful. We'll just put it that way. You got your aerodynamic nose cone. It increases the aerodynamics of your rocket. You got another adapter for who knows what. I don't think there's anything that small, actually. Maybe it's for like a parachute. I think parachutes may be that small. Okay, here we went through the decouplers right here. Now these are radial decouplers and hydraulic detachment manifolds, also decouplers. Both of these items have a small explosive on them, and when you decouple, it pushes whatever's attached to them away. So let's say we had a nice rocket here, and yeah, we had another rocket under here. Let's go ahead and put one down. So we're going, all of a sudden this fuel tank right here on the right runs out of fuel. We don't want it anymore, so we press spacebar and boom, it detaches. These are essential to any rocket. We have another radial engine body. It's pretty much like the other one. It increases oh, okay, wait, no, never mind. I take that back. This one just helps to cool high-performance engines. High-performance engines have a real heating issue, so that you can use this to keep them cold. Hard points. So I mainly use hard points. I'll grab the other one. I normally use them to hold wheels, or when my wheels won't touch the ground, I will use them to increase the distance. These hard points right here don't decouple. They're just always there. And then these, I believe they're called, structural pylons. These do decouple. When you press spacebar, they'll go away. So, yeah, those are just for extensions. They're more structural than have a use. This is a a stack tricoupler. There we go. So you can throw one of these bad boys right here, and then all of a sudden you have 3 places for rockets. Yeah, I mean that's basically all it's for, is to split it into 3. Again, another thing to increase your aerodynamics, a nice nose cone. And then this last page is basically all structural. You have your structural wing. You have another structural wing. You got your tail fin. I believe this one moves, actually. You have your swept wing, which is structural, and your winglet, which this one does move, I'm positive of that. And then you have your strut connector. This is an important one if you're having issues with your ship just tearing apart when it takes off. That means you need more strut connectors. You use it like the fuel, where you click on one place and then you click on another place and it connects them together. They're used to hold everything together. Like if I clicked here and then I went over here and clicked like right there, it would hold them together if they were having an issue falling apart. Okay, so we'll move on to the last area, utility and scientific. There's not a whole lot in this one, but they're all pretty important. You have your mobility enhancers, which is just a ladder. Like we can put it right here. That way, when your Kerbal gets out, he has a ladder to climb down. You also have these, which is a ladder, and it's retractable, so it actually starts retracted. And then when you're ready to climb out with your Kerbal, you can right-click it and press not retract, the opposite of retract, whatever that is. And it'll come out and expand, and so your Kerbal can reach the ground. Really important. This is another version of a ladder. They both have really awesome animations, by the way. So we'll just keep that ladder on there. Next up we have the landing struts. We have two versions of the landing strut. We have the small version and the large version. The large version goes down a lot farther than the small version, but it weighs a little bit more. A lot more, actually. These hardly weigh anything at all. The small ones right now have a real issue with just collapsing when you land, so I would never ever recommend using the small ones. Always use the big ones. And of course you have your parachutes. These are for re-entry when you're coming back to Earth, or Kerbin. So we're going to throw one of these on top of it. There we go. And when you're on your last stage, your parachute will come out and it'll break your fall towards Earth. Always an important thing to have. This is for a larger craft when you're using the Mark III pod. It has a larger, more heavy-duty version of the parachute. And last but not least, the small gear bay. These are your wheels for your space plane. These are obviously essential to space planes. They're really durable. They can be retracted by pressing G. These can also be retracted using G. But yeah. Anyway, okay. So now that we're done with parts, let's talk about the interface of the vehicle assembly building. So you can use your right click to go around any direction. Use your middle click to zoom in and out. You can, if you have to hold it down and pull down or push up, and you'll get closer or farther away. You scroll up and down on your wheel to go up and down. And obviously you left click to add things to your rocket. Up here in the top left, these are two things you really want to pay attention to. You have snapped angles and symmetry. So we're going to flip on snapped angles real fast. And you can see that it is now snapping instead of going smoothly. Here, we'll do a little comparison here. Here's without snapped angles. You see it can be placed anywhere on this rocket. Now with snapped angles on, you see it has all these different angles that it can attach to. It makes it so much easier to keep your symmetry. And speaking of symmetry, if we want a rocket, for example, with 4 different sides that are the exact same, that is what you want to use. So I turned it on 4, and I added 4 rockets. This will work all the way. Attach, please. Okay, something's in the way. Probably the ladder, I would assume. But anyway, yeah, so that's what these two do. Right here is how you name your spacecraft. You can name this one Shivo Mark 1. And over here, when you press save, it saves it under whatever name you named it, so be careful. Don't save it as Untitled Spacecraft, because the next time you have, or the next time you build a rocket and you press save as Untitled Spacecraft, it's going to write over it without asking you. So be really careful about that. So I'm sure y'all are completely bored now. I've been through every single thing. I'm going to build an extremely small rocket real fast, just to show you. So I'll be right back.